Our society is full of blame, whether it's blaming others as a useless tool of self-righteousness, which ultimately does us no good, or self-blame, a terribly crippling behavior. Now, no matter what type of blame we're referring to, the victim gets trapped into a self-image of victimization. The psychological profile of victimization includes pervasive sense of helplessness, passivity, loss of control, pessimism, negative thinking, strong feeling of guilt, shame, remorse, and depression. This way of thinking can lead to helplessness and despair. So let's talk about a very different type of blame. A type of blame that instead of depressing us and putting us down, energizes us with renewed energy and vigor. The type of blame I'm talking about is blaming God. Knowing that no matter what happens, no matter the circumstance, no matter what scenario we're in God's world. God did it. It must be for a good reason. It's going to turn out okay. It'll be fine. The story is told about two great Hasidic masters, the two famous brothers, Rabbi Zusha and Elimelech. They had an old custom that from time to time they would leave their respective communities. They would travel to small villages and towns where no one knew who they were. They were looking for Jews who need help, just to do a mitzvah. They wanted no glory or no fame, just for the mitzvah. Once on one of these travels, somehow, some way, they ended up in prison. They were falsely accused without going into the whole story. They're in prison. Now that's enough for depression. Two big rabbis, two respected people looking to help another person. They're in prison. Why, God? Why did that have to happen? But no, that didn't faze these two great rabbis. They knew it's for the good. God did it. They walk into prison, they're smiling, they're happy. This is all part of the program, all part of the plan. Let's have a good time. They go to sleep. As the sun rises in the morning, one brother wakes up to see his brother crying. And he thinks to himself, my brother's crying. Did he lose his faith in God? Did he forget that everything is for a purpose? Why is he upset? And he turns to his brother and he says, what's going on? You can't lose it. You can't lose the faith. His brother turns to him and says, I'm not upset that we're in prison. What bothers me is that I want to pray. It's the morning. Jewish custom has it that we don the tefillin and we pray every morning. And today I can't pray. Because look in the middle of the room. Standing in the middle of the room was a bucket. Now the purpose of this bucket was it served as the bathroom. There was no outhouse. There was no side room. It was very primitive in those days. In that place, there was a bucket. The Jewish law is that if there's something disgusting in a room, something smelly, something which, is not fitting for prayer, not fitting for a king, you're not allowed to pray in a room that has such content. And he turns to his brother and says, I want to pray. Being in prison doesn't bother me, but I want to fulfill God's commandment of prayer, and here I can't do it because I have this bucket, which is holding me back from fulfilling God's will. And that's what made me cry. His brother thinks for a moment and says, think about it this way. The same God who commands us to pray, He's the one who put us here. He put us in prison and knows we can't pray while we're in this room. Well, if that's the case, what God is basically telling us is today, I want you to serve me instead of prayer. There's a new way of connecting to me. Today, don't pray. Today, in this room, you have a different mission. His brother thinks for a moment and he says, that's absolutely right. God is telling us today we got a different purpose in life. Although normally in the morning a Jew wakes up and prays, today we got a different way of serving God. Today we serve God by refraining from prayer, because Jewish law prohibits prayer in such an environment. And as he's thinking about it, he's realizing, wow, today we have a new way of serving God, which is different than all other days of the rest of our life. Today we serve God in a different form. As he thinks about it and he's realizing, the beauty of what's going on, he starts getting excited. He starts getting happy. And the two brothers get up from their seats early morning in the prison, and they put one hand on the brother's shoulders, and they start dancing. Their eyes are closed. Their faces are bright red. They're excited. They're dancing and celebrating that they're always serving God, no matter the circumstance. And here's a unique way of serving God. Now, the other Polish people, the peasants, who are the other inmates in the prison with them, they see two people dancing in the morning. What do you do when you see someone dancing? Slowly but surely, person by person gets up and joins the circle. And before you know it, the whole prison's up in joy. The whole prison's up in song and singing and dancing, and it's happening. It's like a bar mitzvah. The prison guard, after a few minutes, hears the commotion. He opens the door. He's like, what's going on? It's a prison. It's not a reason for celebration. He's trying to find who's the culprit here. Who caused this commotion? As the peasants see the guards coming into the room, they get a bit scared and they all start pointing at the rabbis. It's like, who did it? What, the rabbis did it? What's going on? Finally, one peasant calls over the guard and he points to the bucket. It's like, the bucket. It's the bucket's fault. Guy looks at the bucket. The bucket's is a reason for celebration. He's like, I don't understand. The peasant tells him, but somehow these rabbis learned from the bucket a new way of serving God. And they're happy and they're joyous. They're all joining in the celebration. The guard thinks for a moment. He says, this bucket is a cause of celebration? I'll teach you guys a lesson. And he goes into the middle of the room, grabs the bucket, and runs out of the room. At that moment, the brothers looked at each other and say, and now we could pray. So dear friends, if you ever have the occasional unpleasant situation, a fender bender, we lack the key in the car, the cleaners are closed and I gotta go to the wedding, we're not a victim. We're living in God's beautiful world. And just remember who to blame. All he does is for the good.